After saving a tiny critter on the street, a man had no clue it would grow into this. It was a chilly evening in early autumn, and Tom was making his way home from work along his usual route. The streets were quiet, the kind of calm that settles in just after sunset. He was lost in thought, mulling over the events of his day, when something unusual caught his eye. Just ahead near the curb, there was a tiny, unmoving shape on the pavement. Tom slowed down, curiosity tugging at him. He took a few steps closer, squinting to make out what it was. As he approached, he saw it. A minuscule, delicate creature barely moving. At first glance, it looked like a small, dark pebble against the concrete. But as he crouched down, Tom realized it was something alive. He held his breath, feeling a strange tug in his chest as he took in the tiny body, its fur matted and damp, its eyes closed tightly. It was so small, so vulnerable, and utterly out of place on the cold, hard street. Tom looked around, half expecting to see someone else notice this fragile life. But the street was empty. The world around him seemed to fade as he focused on the creature lying in front of him. He could see its tiny chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. The little thing was hanging on, but barely. It seemed too weak to move, too young to be on its own. A wave of concern washed over him, followed by a sense of responsibility he hadn't expected to feel. Welcome back to PlotTwister. Before we unravel today's mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you're always in the loop. Slowly, Tom extended a finger, brushing it gently against the creature's side. Its fur was softer than he'd imagined, warm despite the cool evening air. He felt a strange connection, something that urged him to act. Without a second thought, he carefully scooped the tiny critter into his hand, cradling it as if it were the most delicate thing in the world. It was light as a feather, barely a whisper of weight in his palm, but the moment felt heavy with importance. Standing there under the dim glow of a streetlight, Tom felt a spark of purpose. This wasn't just a creature he'd stumbled upon. This was something he was meant to find, something he needed to protect. With a cautious but determined stride, he headed home, his hands cupped carefully around his fragile discovery, already feeling the beginning of a story neither he nor the tiny creature could yet understand. Back at home, Tom gently set the tiny creature down on his kitchen table, his face full of concern and curiosity. He grabbed an old shoebox, lined it with a soft, worn-out hand towel, and placed the little animal inside. It was so small, barely larger than his thumb, and it lay there, still and quiet. Tom watched it for a moment, then pulled out his phone, searching frantically for any advice on caring for an animal this size. His fingers tapped away, scrolling through pages about baby wildlife and emergency care. As he read, his heart raced. He found warnings about keeping baby animals alive in their first few days, and the special care they needed. It was overwhelming, but there was no time to second-guess himself now. He went to the fridge, grabbed a tiny dropper bottle he used for old eye drops, washed it out, and filled it with a little warm water. The tiny creature needed moisture, and Tom's hand shook slightly as he offered the first few drops. He held his breath, watching to see if the creature would respond. To his relief, a tiny pink tongue flicked out, lapping up the water. Tom felt a surge of hope. This little one had some fight left in it. He stayed by the box for hours, carefully offering drops of water. Then a weak mix of milk and water, he read, could help in emergencies. It was slow work. Each time the creature managed to drink, he felt a small victory, a sign that maybe it would make it through the night. Throughout the evening, Tom found himself talking slowly and softly to the little animal, murmuring encouragements as he kept it warm and fed. He lost track of time, only noticing how late it was when the house grew silent, save for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. Finally, he placed the box by his bedside, glancing at it every few minutes as he lay in bed. That first night, he barely slept, his mind racing with worry and questions. But each time he checked the box, there it was, the tiny creature alive, breathing, clinging to life. As the days passed, Tom became more invested in his tiny house guest. The little creature seemed stronger with each passing day, its breathing steadier, its small body moving more energetically. Tom felt a mix of relief and pride each time he saw it respond to his care. He'd wake up each morning and immediately check the box, holding his breath until he saw it stir. It was a routine that became strangely comforting, the first thing he looked forward to every day. He watched as the creature's eyes began to open, little by little revealing dark, shiny pupils that blinked curiously up at him. Those eyes seemed filled with wonder, taking in the world for the first time. Tom was entranced by this tiny life that had somehow chosen him. He found himself wondering, what exactly had he saved? Its small, delicate features looked familiar, yet somehow different. The creature's face was rounded with tiny whiskers and soft, fluffy fur that seemed to grow denser each day. The more he observed, the more curious Tom began. He snapped a few photos, trying to match them with images he found online. He scrolled through pages of baby squirrels, chipmunks, and mice, tilting his head, comparing every detail. Nothing seemed to match exactly, which only deepened his fascination. He posted the photos on a few forums, hoping someone might recognize it, but the responses were all guesses, nothing certain. One afternoon, as he was feeding it a tiny bit of formula, the creature reached out, wrapping its tiny paw around his finger. Tom felt a rush of warmth, an unexpected bond with this fragile life. He hadn't planned on keeping it for long, but now the thought of letting it go felt oddly painful. He started calling it Pip, a small, simple name for his tiny friend. Day by day, Pip grew more lively, and Tom noticed small behaviors that puzzled him. This little creature seemed more curious than cautious, exploring the edges of the box, lifting its nose as if catching scents in the air. There was something different about Pip, something that felt unique, and Tom's curiosity turned to fascination. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary animal, and every new discovery left him with more questions than answers. Pip was growing fast, faster than Tom had anticipated. Each morning he found the tiny creature a little more alert, a little more curious. Pip's fur had thickened, becoming a soft, sleek coat that shimmered faintly in the light. Tom noticed Pip stretching his little limbs, testing his balance, and even making short, playful hops around the shoebox. It was as if Pip was preparing for something, some instinctive urge Tom couldn't quite understand. One afternoon, Tom set Pip down on the kitchen counter while he cleaned out the box. He kept a close eye, but Pip seemed content to explore the countertop, sniffing around with that ever-growing curiosity. Then, in a moment that made Tom's heart skip, Pip climbed up onto a folded kitchen towel, stood on his tiny back legs, and leapt into the air. Tom's hand shot out instinctively, ready to catch him, but Pip didn't fall. Instead, he stretched his small limbs wide, gliding through the air in a graceful, almost magical motion, landing softly just a foot or so away. Tom froze, staring in amazement. He hadn't expected that. Pip, the tiny creature he'd rescued, wasn't just jumping, he was gliding. Tom's mind raced with the realization that Pip wasn't an ordinary little animal. Pip was something else, something extraordinary. The pieces started to come together in his mind, fragments of things he'd read online, memories of pictures he'd seen. Could Pip be a flying squirrel? The thought thrilled and unnerved him all at once. As the days went on, Pip's little flights became more frequent. Tom adjusted his surroundings to give Pip more space to practice, moving objects out of the way and setting up soft landings for the daring little creature. Pip's confidence grew with each leap, and Tom found himself cheering him on. Amazed at the skill and grace in such a tiny body, it was as if Pip had been waiting for this all along, waiting to show Tom who he really was. Each glide, each fearless jump, deepened Tom's admiration. He'd never seen anything like it. Pip wasn't just surviving, he was thriving, adapting to his instincts in a way that left Tom in awe. The mystery of what Pip could become filled Tom's thoughts, a thrilling question that now followed him through each day. Pip was no longer the fragile creature Tom had first found on the street. His once tiny body had grown stronger, his glides more confident and controlled. Each day brought some new, small milestone that left Tom filled with pride and awe. Pip would launch himself from one end of the living room to the other, stretching his limbs wide as he glided through the air. His tiny face focused his movements gracefully. It was a sight Tom could hardly believe. And yet there it was, right before his eyes. One evening as Tom was sitting on the couch, Pip scrambled up to his shoulder, giving him a quick, playful nudge before launching off. Pip soared across the room, landing softly on a blanket Tom had draped over a chair as a makeshift landing pad. Tom clapped, laughing at Pip's daring spirit. It was as if Pip knew he was performing, taking pleasure in Tom's delight and his reaction. Each glide seemed to bring Pip a sense of joy, and Tom couldn't help but share in it. Tom began to notice other changes too. Pip's movements were more precise, his balance perfect. Even on the narrowest ledges, his confidence radiated through every little leap and bound. Pip had gone from a helpless creature to a skilled, agile flyer, and Tom marveled at the transformation. He watched Pip with a sense of wonder, feeling both like a proud parent and a fascinated observer of nature's magic. One day, as Tom was preparing Pip's food, he heard a soft, almost musical chirping sound from across the room. He turned and saw Pip perched on a shelf, looking at him intently, the tiny sounds escaping from his small mouth. Tom realized this was Pip's way of communicating, of expressing himself. It was as if Pip was speaking to him, sharing his joy in each new discovery. With each passing day, Tom sensed a deeper intelligence in Pip, a personality that went beyond simple instinct. Pip was playful, curious, even mischievous at times. He'd hide small objects around the house, only to appear later with a look of innocent pride. Tom's house had become Pip's playground, a world of new experiences that he embraced with pure enthusiasm. Watching Pip grow and thrive filled Tom with a sense of purpose. This tiny creature he'd saved had not only survived but blossomed into something extraordinary, filling Tom's life with moments of magic he hadn't known he was missing. The day had come when Tom knew it was time to set Pip free. It was a bittersweet realization, one he had been quietly preparing for in his heart. Pip had grown strong, capable, and every time Tom watched him glide through the air, he could see a wild spirit longing for more than the walls of his home. Pip's playful chirps and daring flights were full of life, of energy that belonged in the open, where trees stretched to the sky and branches waited to be explored. Tom took a deep breath as he set up a small outdoor enclosure in his backyard, a place where Pip could start exploring the world safely. He opened the door of Pip's familiar box, watching as Pip hesitated for a moment, looking back at Tom with those bright, curious eyes. Tom knelt down, giving Pip a gentle nudge of encouragement. Slowly, Pip crawled forward, sniffing the air, feeling the ground beneath him. Then, in one quick motion, Pip darted up the trunk of a nearby tree, pausing halfway to glance back at Tom as if to say goodbye. Tom felt a lump in his throat, watching Pip take those first real steps towards independence. He raised his hand in a quiet farewell, heart swelling with pride and a touch of sadness. Pip stayed in the tree watching Tom for a moment longer before venturing out onto a branch and leaping into a graceful glide to another tree. For the next few days, Pip roamed around the backyard, testing his newfound freedom, but always returning to Tom's yard as if checking in, showing Tom that he was okay. Each visit brought a little joy back to Tom's heart, easing the ache of letting go. He knew Pip was finding his place in the world, but their bond wasn't broken. Then one evening, as Tom sat quietly on his porch, Pip appeared again, landing on the railing beside him. Tom reached out and Pip nuzzled his hand, a simple gesture of trust and gratitude. Tom felt a deep peace settle over him, knowing he had helped this tiny creature not only survive, but thrive. In the days that followed, Pip continued his visits, sometimes bringing small treasures, a nut, a leaf, a bit of moss, as if sharing pieces of his new world. Tom's heart swelled with gratitude each time Pip appeared, knowing their story was one of both freedom and friendship. What are your thoughts on the twist we uncovered today? Comment your ideas below. Make sure to like and subscribe for a daily dose of drama and mystery. See you later with another twist.